Oh, I forgot to turn on something. See how dark everything looks? Hello, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. It is Monday, October 9th, and I'm looking to find that software I need to turn on to change the color of the camera. There it is. It's all simple. It's just simple. There's nothing to this. There really isn't. And I'm knocking stuff on the floor and everything else. It's just not easy being me. That's all I can tell you. Well, I think I've got a neat little vlog for you this morning. I got two videos that you'll get to see. Both of them are a little longer than the average, but they're not real long. And first, let's do a few little housekeeping things. I remind everybody that if you have questions, comments, or topics, put question marks in front of it. In other words, in your comment section here today, put like 3 question marks in front of your comment, and that way I'll see it and know that you're wanting me to talk about it or address it or whatever. We will be in Mountain View, Arkansas, October 19th through the 22nd, and I still don't know how my good buddy Gene is doing. I need to call him this morning, and I will do that after we're finished with our vlog here this morning. And we'll see how he's doing. I pray that he's holding his own, but we know his time is limited. I received a wonderful viewer gift from Rod Wentler, and Rod is from Berkeley, California. He says he's 79 years old. He started playing bluegrass in the late 1950s, but sadly arthritis has taken a toll on him too, so he's just picking in short bursts these days. He said his wife died 3 years ago. Sorry to hear that, Rod. Hope things are progressing for you okay. He said, perhaps the biggest skill that I have taught him is perseverance and patience. He sent me this beautiful scope. Now, man, I should have had this when I was working on instruments. This is a nice scope. The ones that I had in the past, I have 2 other ones, and they both tie into either a smartphone or a tablet. And, you know, they're good. They work fine, but it's a hassle. It's hooking them up, getting them to talk to each other. You know, it's just a hassle. This, all you do to make this work is push this button. Bingo, it's working. Isn't that cool? So you can see that it's taking pictures of the shop here, just around. Like there's a picture of my shirt. You know, you can see it on the screen there. Pretty cool. This thing is awesome. The only problem is I needed it 10 years ago. But boy, it'll be handy. I got lots of projects. This'll come in really handy, Rod. Thank you so very much. I'm really tickled to have this. I was actually thinking about going out and buying one like this. The sad thing is, the reason I probably didn't is because I was a little gun shy, because I bought one like this years ago, and it's just been sitting in the corner. It's not nearly as nice as this one. This is really nice. So thank you, Rod. I really do appreciate it. This thing works so simple and it works so well. I'm sure I'll be using it quite a bit in the future, and I'm sure you'll see it on a future video somewhere down the line. Very happy to have it. Let's see here. My wife gave me a gift also. It's fix this. So she ordered new parts for one of her sprayers. So all I have to do is figure out how it goes together and put it together and fix that this morning. So that's another thing I'll be doing as soon as we're finished with the vlog here, is fixing her sprayer. I released the mandolin video over the weekend, and it seems to be doing well, and the comments were very nice, and I appreciate that. If you haven't seen it, you might want to check it out. It's probably the last video I'll be doing on luthier work for quite a while. I mean, I'm not saying I won't do any more. I'm just saying that Probably won't be any more consistent jobs, you know. It'll just be for friends, family, things like that, or my own instruments if something breaks and I need to fix it or whatever. And I'll film those if that happens down the road. I made a little bit of progress on the wall this weekend. In fact, it's big progress. It got me off of my dead zero or center of the fence mode that I was in. Take a look at this. I think you'll see that, well, it may not be too impressive to you, but if you could have seen the swampy mess that was there, it would be impressive. So take a look. Kind of a almost frosty morning this morning. It's not, it's just down in the low 40s, so it's very cool, humid. You can see the fog. And the crows were really super active, so I thought I'd turn on the camera, but of course they shut up as soon as I turned it on. You can still hear them in the distance, and here's one flying across, going to where they're all calling down in the valley. Something big's going on down there. They're probably chasing an owl or something. Crows like to give owls a hard time, sometimes hawks, but mostly owls. One of the side benefits of watching my daily vlogs is you get an inside track on the projects that I'm doing that you'll see later in videos. Thus is the case this morning. I made some more progress on the water wheel retaining wall. And in fact, I think I've made enough progress that I can possibly form up the foundation for the concrete now. I didn't finish the wall entirely because I have to do some more work on this close end to suit Sue to make it work out to the landscape better. But it's not anything that would keep me from working on the water wheel house itself. The pond you can see is, I don't know what you call that, mist or steam or something, but it's pretty. So get over here and show you what the progress I made was. My problem was I couldn't figure out a way to get rid of the mud and the swamp area. I mean, it was bad. So what I did was I put the backhoe back on the Bobcat, came over here, and I dug out this whole area here from right about here over, which is further than it looks. It's probably, well, actually about right here. About right here over. It's about 3.5 to 4 feet. And I dug this whole area out, down about 3 foot deep or more, all the way over. And then you can see I filled the whole area with this clean rock, which comes out of the creek. So I put about 5 or 6 big scoops of that heavy rock in here and filled this back up. Then I was able to spread my gravel back over the top, or my crushed rock back over the top. And then I was able to add length here and then go straight up with the wall, which is nice because now I can bring my flume right through here and have my water wheel like right in this general area. I think it's going to work out really, really well. I'm pretty happy with it. In fact, I may replace this pipe. I have a feeling I will. And the pipe will come out just a little bit further when I replace it, hopefully. And anyway, it's a whole process. There's just a lot to this. But I think this is going to work out. Now it's not swampy anymore. It's absolutely very strong, very stable. I ran the compactor over it quite a bit. And that's really good. I'm really happy with it. Presently, the water is just running down through that big heavy gravel and feeding out. And you can see it actually coming out down there. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But eventually, most of that water is going to come over the water wheel. And I don't know. There's a possibility that I might make a concrete swale all the way through here to catch the water and let the water run on out. I really don't know yet. It's all up in the air. As I've said before, I design on the fly. Like, I really didn't know I was going to do this until I did it. I was just trying to think of a way to stabilize this area, and then I remembered I had done something very much like this over at our cave. The front of the cave was swampy like this. You couldn't even walk into the cave. You would sink down to your knees, and that's the way this was. But once I dug all that swampy mud out and replaced it with this heavy gravel, creek gravel, it's perfectly stable over there, and that's been stable for 10, 12 years. So I thought, well, why not do the same thing right here? And so I did. Beautiful morning, just very cool out here this morning. Well, hope you enjoyed that little update on the wall. Yeah, I think that lets me move forward now. There's a good chance. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, like I said, I don't really have any engineered drawings. I don't have any things written out, step 1, step 2. And I'm just wanting to make sure I cover all my bases as I take the next step. So the next step right now, or at least the next step I'm seeing in my mind is forming it up to pour the concrete pad. So that may be the next thing I do. I'm not really sure. But if that is the next thing I do, I might even get started on that yet today. You just never know. So that's the name of that tune. We have 96 viewers at the moment. Oh, I forgot to tell you again. I always forget to tell you how many subs. We had 99,442 subs this morning, just before we went live. And that's growing at a rate of 2479 over the last 28 days. Both numbers have gone up, though I will admit they didn't go up by as much on a daily basis since last week. In other words, it slowed down a little bit, but it's still going up. Anyway, let's move into the next little video I have for you. You've heard me mention a lot of times that I was into archery and all that good stuff. And I started that when I was a teenager, probably 14, 15, somewhere in there. And one of the coaches from the high school was over with my dad, and he was interested in horses, and we're at our house, and I had an archery range set up, and he was watching me shoot. He goes, "Wow," he says, "Kid, you are good with that thing." He says, "You ought to be in the archery club when you get to high school." Well, I was a year or so away from high school at that point. And anyway, so sure enough, when I got to high school, I joined their archery club, and the rest is history, as they say. I became the Missouri State champion in the intermediate division when I was like 16, and my score that year would have been second in the adult division, and we were shooting at the same targets at the same distances. So, it was not a problem. I was able to do it and had it down really well. Well, and then I shot in lots of tournaments. I eventually shot in a tournament like up in Champaign, Illinois, where Doug Brothers and Richard McKinney were shooting, and they eventually turned out to be Olympic and world champions. And in that particular tournament, I actually beat both of them in that tournament. And so, I'm just pointing out that I was at least competing at that kind of a level. And then the coach in the high school, and he wasn't the archery coach guy. He was a different coach that, you get assigned a coach for your actual PE class. Well, he was that guy. And, I told him, I said, "Coach, I don't want to jump on that trampoline." I said, "Man, I don't want to get hurt." I said, the Olympic trials are coming up here in the next couple of months, and I just don't want to take a chance on getting hurt. You don't jump on it, you're getting an F in the class. Okay, so and I'm not exaggerating, the first jump I ever made on a trampoline in my life, and I mean the first bounce, and he told me to do a front fall. Well, I tore this shoulder completely out. You can still see the hump in the shoulder today. I've got a big knot right there. and it tore it out bad. I couldn't even pick my hand up above my waist for 6 months. So the Olympics went out the window. Yeah, if I knew then what I know now, things would be a lot different. I would, boy, man, it was bad. So that kind of ruined my archery career. But I still shot and competed. And one of my buddies that was kind of like my friend now, Gene, that's dying of cancer, I had another friend, Gary McGee, and I worked with him at Bell. And he had heard about me talk about archery and things, and he says, man, he says, before I die, and he was dying of cancer, just like Gene. He says, before I die, I says, I want to go with you to a tournament. I want to see you shoot. I said, well, man, I haven't shot in a tournament in, almost 15 years, He says, I don't care. I want to see you shoot in a tournament. I said, okay. And I just figured, okay, and maybe we'd get that done and maybe not. And he goes, there's a tournament this weekend at Jefferson Barracks. And I said, oh. And it was a hunting tournament. Now, that wasn't my specialty. Hunting tournaments definitely were not my specialty, though I had shot in a few of those over the years. My specialty was target archery, where you're using a sight and what they call a clicker. So you're pulling your arrow through a little device up here, and as soon as the arrow goes through that device, you release. It's a clicker. It actually clicks off of your arrow. It goes right off the point of your arrow, and you're using a sight, and you got stabilizers and everything. I mean, it's a whole thing. Those target bows are completely different than your hunting bows and than your stick bows that I'm going to show you, this bow here. Well, anyway, he says, I want to go to that hunting tournament. I want to see you shoot. I said, okay. So that weekend, I didn't have any time to prepare or anything. And we get there, and back when I was shooting at hunting tournaments, 10, 15 years before that, you'd see maybe 50 people, 75 people at the tournament. We pull up, and I swear to you, if there was one person there, there were 300. I have never seen a hunting tournament like that in my life. It was huge. And I was really taken back. And I said, wow. I said, man, fat chance I'll have of scoring today, And so, he just wanted to do it. It was just something, because you're walking through the woods and you're shooting at targets and you do not know the distance. It'll be a target of a squirrel or a target of a rabbit or a target of a deer or a bear or a moose, or whatever. And it can be at any distance, and some of the targets are on a pulley and they slide across the trail. And you're not taken by surprise. You know it's going to happen. You say pull or whatever, kind of like you do at a shoot with a shotgun, where you're pulling and throwing the clay bird. It's kind of like that. But you say, okay, and then they let the target go and it runs across the trail, and then you have to shoot it on the fly, on the move. Well, out of 300 and whatever number of archers that were there that day, and there were every bit of that, I got third place. I was amazed that I got third place. And then while we were standing there, Gary was right next to me. A man walked up to me. He goes, you do know you got ripped off, right? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you know that you should have got first. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, the two guys that got first and second, those are the two guys that set up the course. See, now, in the old days, you couldn't do that. You immediately disqualified. If you set up the course, you could not shoot in the tournament. You could shoot for fun, but you could not shoot to compete. So they ended up winning it. Of course, they knew all the yardages. And just as one example there of how critical those yardages are, we came up to this long line of guys shooting in the tournament. And it was a long line. You had to wait 30 minutes to get up to the target. And you could you couldn't see the target from where we were in the line, but you could hear the arrows like that, and nobody was hitting the target. You could tell it was a long way. And so we get up there, and I immediately judged it at 80 yards. I just said, it's got to be 80 yards. 80 yards is a long way. Think of that on a football field. It's a long way. And it's through the woods. So it's really, depth perception is very difficult. So my bow was it was just a Browning kind compound bow. It wasn't a very fancy bow at all. In fact, I just had it for hunting. I didn't have it for competition at all. And it only had a 20, 30, 40, and 50-yard pins. I had 20, 30, 40, and 50-yard pins. So if you think that out, between the 20 and the 50, there's 30 yards. So I didn't have any way of shooting at 80 yards with any kind of accuracy. So what I did was I put my 50-yard pin on the heart of that deer, and then I looked and I saw where my 20-yard pin was at on a tree. And it just so happened there was a bright yellow leaf right exactly where the pin was. So I just moved my 50-yard pin up to that bright yellow leaf and released and smoked it, hit it right dead center in the heart. I mean, just killed it. Everybody started screaming, and of course my buddy Gary was, pretty amazed that I had hit that deer and killed it. Now, it was 80% luck, to be quite truthful. I mean, there's a certain amount of skill level because you kind of know how to approach the problem. But on the other hand, I didn't really know if it was 80 yards or not. That was just a pure guess. So there was a lot of luck involved. But anyway, when we got up to the target, there was only like 2 or 3 arrow holes in the whole target, and most of those were like in a leg or a foot or a head or something like that. Nobody was in the heart. So as far as I know, I may have been the only one that hit that in the heart that day. But anyway, so all that to say, I got 3rd place in that, and that was the last tournament I ever shot in. So here is my little archery demonstration. Now keep in mind, I am almost 69 years old. I'll be 69 in November. And that last archery competition was when I was, I think, 36. So, 33 years ago? And have not shot a single competition since then. And really haven't shot very much at all since then, other than just a little bit of hunting in the fall, and that's it. And it's probably been almost 10 years since I've even shot this bow. And I'll show you a close-up of the bow after you see the little demonstration. I did not edit this at all other than to make it faster. In other words, like I sped it up where I'm walking, and I cut out where I'm looking for arrows. I cut that out, but I did not cut out any shots at all. I showed every shot that I made. Well, quite honestly, my friends, I haven't even strung this bow up in nearly 10 years since I made it. I made it about 10 years ago, right after I started the YouTube channel, I think. I think there might even be a video out there showing this after I made it. It's not a very strong bow. It's only about 35 pounds. And I haven't shot a bow at all in the last, probably close to 10 years, really. I think I killed a deer with a bow about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe something like that. And that was only 1 or 2 shots. And I really haven't shot it since then. So for me to even think I have a chance of hitting anything is kind of a slim idea. But this will be the very, very first arrow, I promise you. I haven't even drawn it back, let alone shot an arrow out of it. So I have no idea how this is going to go. Let me just draw it back to make sure I can draw it back. I don't know. This is probably silly, but here we go. Oh, shot over it. I was trying to hit it on the fly, but it's kind of hard to do all that. Not very good. Not very good. I'm pretty rusty. Ooh, couldn't even get it up fast enough. I used to be a lot faster at this. If I had somebody here to throw it for me, I think I could probably hit it. But trying to do it all yourself is pretty hard. That's actually pretty hard even when I'm practiced up, let alone like this. Oh, didn't miss it by much. Shot to the right of it, about 6 inches. Ah, bad shot, bad shot. That kind of shooting I can pretty much do.
But, you know, keep in mind, this is all instinct. There's no sights or anything. I'm just pointing and aiming. Whoa, almost shot the other arrow. Well, I noticed I'm shooting to the right, so I need to compensate for that a little bit. Oh, almost landed on it there. Shot right by it. All right, I'm going to try to hit it in the red cap. Well, I was trying to hit it in the red cap. As you can see, I missed that by a little bit, but not too bad. Oh boy, I almost hit it that time. I'm pretty sure if I had somebody else throwing them for me, I could hit them. That was close. I'm going to try to hit it in the red label that I can see there. Went through it. Well, let's see if I can hit it in the shorter grass. The reason is I keep losing the arrow out there in the tall grass. I hit that one right where I was aiming, so I'm getting better. Okay, I'm going to hit the right edge of the label. This one I hit really right where I was aiming, pretty close, or I was actually aiming right there. This one I missed it by a pretty good amount. I was aiming like right here, so I hit up high. But it's not too terribly bad for not having shot for so long and being as old as I am and all the other excuses I can think of. Okay, we got it out there a little bit further now. It's about, close to 15 yards now. About 45 feet, something like that. 30 feet. It's at least 30 feet, if not a little further. I'm going to shoot for the red cap. I'm going to turn my hat around because this is interfering with what I'm doing. I'm going to try to hit the red cap. Whoa, that went right on through. I'm not really sure which one of those holes, but I was shooting at the red cap, and I think I hit that one, but I'm not positive of that. Getting better. It's coming back. It's coming back. It's definitely coming back to me. I'm getting there. I'm pretty sure I could hit them moving now. I've about got it dialed in. I just need somebody to cooperate and throw them for me because I can't do it all at once. It's just I'm not coordinated enough anymore.
Well, that was the end of it there. I didn't... Everybody was busy. I didn't feel like bothering anybody to throw them for me, but maybe one of these days we'll get it out and do that again. And I'd like to actually get the clay birds out and see if I could hit a few clay birds. At one time, I could hit them, not every time or anything, but I could hit them fairly good for a bow. So I used to be really good at it. Now keep in mind, that's not the kind of archery I excelled at. I excelled at the kind I was telling you about, with the sights and the stabilizers and the targets and the whole bit. You know, that was where I really shined. This type of archery with no sights at all is called instinctive shooting. And while I don't think I'm a slouch at that, that's not where I really feel like I, shine when it comes to target archery. And the target archery is what makes you a good shot with a gun too, because you're so used to being perfectly steady at 100 yards. I mean, you're shooting at a 9-inch bullseye at 100 yards. It's actually 90 meters, so it's, I think, within 3 feet of 100 yards. So, I mean, that's the length of a football field, and you're shooting at something a little bit smaller than a paper plate. So, and if you're not mostly in the paper plate, you're at 100 yards, you're really not in the competition. So, anyway, that'll give you some idea. I just wanted to show you that. I always thoroughly have loved archery. I probably never would have gotten into music, honestly, had the archery career not ended so abruptly with the shoulder injury. I can still shoot, but not like the way I used to be able to shoot. But anyway, here's a close-up look at the bow. I made this out of trees I cut down here on the farm. The brown wood is cherry. You know me and words. The brown wood is cherry. The dark brown wood in the center of the stripe is walnut. The light colored wood is maple. Now, I take it back. That's probably sycamore. And then the face of this is sycamore, and then this face here is fiberglass. Man, I just can't come up with words today. Then this leather here, I just did a little inlay there. I just put this leather, and I just put a piece of leather underneath this as a pad to keep the arrow out away from the bow a little bit. And then the same way under here, I just made a kind of a rest and put a little pad of leather there underneath the main leather. I used to be a leather worker also, by the way. But anyway, this is sycamore. I thought you just don't make. I've never even heard of anybody making a bow with sycamore limbs, but this works great. It's a great shooting little bow for just a lightweight bow. This kind of bow is not the best for deer hunting, although you could kill a deer with this. There's no doubt. But it's more for like quick shooting, like if you were going rabbit hunting or squirrel hunting, or just out there playing around like we were doing there. Or another option would be to try to shoot those clay birds with a lightweight bow like this. Because if you're shooting a strong bow, I mean, arrow's going to go 5 miles away, you know. So this bow here, if you're shooting at things in the air, you use what they call a flu arrow. These great big feathers. It'll shoot fast for a short distance, but these big feathers make it drop off quick, and with the blunt tips on the end there, they don't typically go under the grass so much, and then these fall back to the earth and typically just fall over. They don't even necessarily stick in the ground, but usually they don't bury under the grass. But these are also useful for rabbit hunting and things like that, these kind of flu arrows. But mostly I typically use them for shooting things in the air. So that's that. And then my other arrows were just store-bought type arrows here that I have. Then I made my own quiver here, and I drew my own design there and just cut that out, and stitch the leather and the whole bit. So, I just, really archery was my first real passion, from childhood on. I just really loved archery. I don't know why exactly. I think it's because you got to do it all by yourself, I've always been kind of a loner anyway. And so, it's kind of just a fun hobby, and it's a good, clean hobby, and just a lot of fun. It takes a lot of patience and practice and skill and things. And one of my fondest memories of archery was Sue's cousin, Gary Bickmeyer. Sue and her cousin, Gary, lived just a house apart in the subdivision there. And Gary was my best friend. And I would go out to Gary's farm almost every weekend, bow hunting with him and stuff. And we just had a great time and growing up together. And Gary and I shot a lot together. To be perfectly honest with you, Gary wasn't a very good shot. In fact, he was kind of a poor shot. But he was excellent hunter. He was an excellent hunter and an excellent tracker. In fact, I've never met anybody who could track like him. I mean, golly, just on another level altogether. So, he couldn't shoot very good. So he'd hit a deer in the back leg or something, but he'd track it 5 miles and find it. You know what I mean? Like I don't think he ever wasted an animal ever. He always got his animal, but he just didn't hit it very clean most of the time. And one of the times I'm trying to think, was that him or was that one me? I think that one, yeah, that was him. He shot and his arrow, he's right before this particular shot was going right for the heart. He goes, man, it was headed right for the heart. And he says, I just saw sparks. And he goes, it was like almost dark, and he said his arrow was going right toward the heart of the deer. And then he said, just sparks. And the deer ran off. What's up with that? And so he's out there with a flashlight trying to see what happened, and his arrow went right between the barbed wire fence. So the twisted wire of the barbed wire, his arrow went right through the twist. It was stuck right there. So just funny things like that. And then whenever we would be practicing together, you'd get what you call a bounce out, and then your arrow would be laying crossways. Like we'd also, a lot of the times we would be shooting into a dirt bank. Like we had some dry ponds around that area, and so they were a perfect backstop because you could shoot into that dirt. And if you could get a bounce out in that and the arrow would lay sideways, well, he'd start cussing instantly. He'd go, you son of a, he SOB, he says, don't you do it. And because he knew every time his arrow would fall across, I'd be shooting at his arrow, and more often than not, I could break his arrow. He'd start screaming every time. It was just fun memories to remember stuff like that. But we made our own arrows. It wasn't like it was a big deal, it wasn't a big deal. So anyway, let's go look at the comments here. Before we went live, Tom Armstrong was the first one to make a comment. It says, good morning, Jerry, from Chile, New Hampshire. Yeah. And Ken Solo is there, and Trevor Barrett, and Caroline Fike, Michael Green. He has a question. It says, can you give your thoughts on laminated sides on a guitar? I know it's for strength, but most seem to glue them together with epoxy. Seems like a waste to me. Well, Michael, I don't like to talk about something unless I figure I'm at least very knowledgeable. Whether I'm the expert or not is a different story, but if I'm not knowledgeable on the subject, I don't generally like to talk too much about it. And the truth is, I don't have a lot of knowledge about the laminated type instruments. I've worked on a bunch of them, but I've never read up on it to see how they're put together. I've really never read up on it to see what kind of glue they use or what kind of epoxy or any of that. So I don't really feel like I'm any kind of an expert to make much of a comment on it. My preference, of course, is to have solid wood. But a laminated, guitar can sound very, very good. I've heard quite a few that sound really phenomenal, and they're making more and more improvements on that as time goes on too, and maybe finding better materials to laminate them together with. But in my opinion, epoxy is not a good choice. In my opinion, course, they come up with new formulas all the time. So it may be better now, but in the old days, the epoxy was very brittle, very hard, very dry. Just wasn't that great of a choice. Nowadays, especially with carbon fiber and all that, there's all kinds of new options. And so I just don't feel like I'm the expert on it. Otherwise, I've already told you what I know, which is not much. Catherine Volts says, good morning, Jerry and everyone from West Palm Beach, Florida. Can't read for nothing. Christia Thomason, good morning from Chile, North Carolina. There's Dottie Hildebrand and Paul Walton. Chuck Heidbreder from St. James. We'll be playing a show for the Lucy Wortham James Elementary School on October 18th in St. James there, Chuck. So we've done that quite a few times. I think I'm going to say fourth grade. I'm not sure about that. Might be third grade. But anyway, they parade them through one class at a time, and we do about a 15-minute presentation for each class. I prefer the other method where you bring all the kids into one auditorium and we do the one presentation one time, but anyway, that's what we'll be doing there at St. James here on the 18th. Blackjack Guitar says, good morning, Jerry and Chatsters. Happy Columbus Day. Thanksgiving to Canadians. Cool. Bill Mumbo says, you owe us and yourself a dobro. Well, that's true, Blackjack Guitar, and I will get to that eventually. But there's a lot on the plate. But I do still plan to do a dobro. I really do. And actually, I'm kind of glad you reminded me, because sometimes these things kind of get out of my mind, and that was one of them that kind of got out of my mind. But I do want to do that, and maybe this fall when I start cutting so much firewood during the day, I'll maybe have some time and work on that. Blackjack Guitar says, smoke on the water. That's yeah, and Gotta Fly Lee says, we call that smoke on the water. I've never heard that term. I really haven't. I've never heard anybody call it smoke on the water. I just have always either called it mist or fog. Chuck Heidbreder, try using a pipe to temporarily bypass that area and keep it dry until you finish the work. Yeah, we could do that. I don't really need to keep it dry at this point. That big rock that I put down there at the base is very porous, and it'll let stuff pass through, and the stuff on top is really packed solid. So I don't really feel like there's much of a problem at this point. Before, when it was just mud, it was, I'm seriously telling you, you'd sink up to your knees. If you stood there long enough, it would go to your knees. It was that soft. So it's not like that now. I dug it way down, and I mean, at least 3 feet down, if not further, and then just filled it with that heavy rock, and that spreads out the stress is what it does. It doesn't really, it's still kind of soft down there. It's not as soft as it was on the surface, but it's still a little soft. But when you spread out that much big rock, and keep in mind that rock also has a lot of sand, and there's a little bug driving me crazy. Anyway, that rock has a lot of small gravel in it and a lot of sand in it, and so it fills in all the little pores and things too. It gets very solid. It's amazing how solid that changes things. And then the crushed rock on top of it, and then having compacted it all down, I don't think I've got any kind of a problem there now. I really think that was a good move. I just don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, really. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, There's Bo Horn, he says good morning. And Karma Charms Kittens, good morning, folks. The pond sure looks beautiful. Well, thank you. Let's see. Karma says it takes great strength to pull back those bows. I recall it also pinches the fingers. I am good just watching the arrows fly. Yeah, you know, there's a lot to archery, but if you get the right instruction from the beginning, like I said, I taught it my whole senior year in high school. I never even went to class. And I say never, I mean occasionally I did. Like maybe once a week I would go to attend each class one time per week or something like that. Most of that was just to stay in touch with the teacher, more or less, just to let them know I'm still a student. But you know, I pretty much spent all day, every day down in the gym teaching archery. That was the agreed upon deal. I got to teach the archery. They knew I was the Missouri State champ, so you know, I got to teach the archery classes as long as I kept my grades up. So the point of your comment, though, is that if you get the right instruction, it's really actually very easy. It's really not even that hard. I think people that I taught were amazed how easy it really was. I could get almost anybody hitting a paper plate at, say, 20 yards. I could have them hitting a paper plate almost every shot within an hour, within an hour. It's amazing how you can do it if you get the right instruction. Karma says, wow, you made that bow? Is there anything you can't build? Well, I can't cook. I literally cannot cook. That's one thing I cannot do. I can do most other things. I've done almost every other thing, and the reason is because we never had any money, and my dad grew up that way, and I've already told you my dad only went through the 6th grade, so he had to learn how to do everything himself, and consequently I kind of learned how to do everything myself, and it's just one of those kinds of deals. Ed D says, who needs the government? Jerry can build the wall. Well, I guarantee you, if I was in charge of it, there'd be a whole lot less red tape, and it would be a whole lot simpler, and it would get done a whole lot faster. If they would put me in charge and give me control, let's put it that way. I guarantee you, it would get done it would be so much cheaper. It wouldn't even cost 1/4 of what it's costing. Ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And then she goes, Carmen says, clever use of a milk jug for a target. Yeah, those are great for just kicking around. They don't break your arrows and stuff, and if you do get a pass through, typically it doesn't really create much of a problem. Unless your feathers are a little loose, then it might tear them off. Calvin says, are you sure your last name isn't Hood? That was my nickname when I was in school. Everybody called me Robin Hood. But I don't really think they meant it negatively. At least most of them seem to admire it because they had been in my archery class in school, and most of them knew that I could do what I said I could do. Karma asks, how do you maintain that grass? Do you tractor mow it or does the horses graze it? No, Sue takes care of that. Sue just loves to be out on a tractor or a lawnmower. She loves to cut grass. I don't know why she didn't work for my dad, because my dad had that lawn service. She could have took my place and cut all that grass instead of me. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's the old joke, and I've said it many times here on the channel, is that when I got to marrying age, I drove around the neighborhood and looked for a girl that was cutting her own grass and married her. That's kind of the truth in a sense. Mitzi says, good shooting, Jerry. Well, thank you. I was going to cut it out and only show the hits, but I thought, no, it is what it is. I haven't shot for a long time, but I think you could see it was tightening up as I went. It was tightening up pretty fast, and it wouldn't take me long, I don't think, to get back in the groove. Yeah, the freeze says I could shoot a quarter at just about every time at 20 yards with my old PSE lightning and release, using a release. He says, I wish I could shoot fingers like you. I hadn't. I never had anyone teach me how. Yeah, shooting with fingers, by the way, is much more difficult. It really is. That's, when you're using your fingers, it's not the same as a release. A release, there's all kinds of releases. Some of them you just turn loose, like with your thumb. Some of them have a strap, you just release it. Some of them have a button you push. Some of them have a trigger you pull. There's all kinds of releases. But whatever, that makes it more like shooting a gun with a release. Now, when I was shooting archery at those 100-yard distances, it was all Olympic competition, so under Olympic rules, so you could not use a release. It had to be fingers. So when you're shooting at 100 yards with fingers, that's way harder than 100 yards with a release. And like shooting that quarter that you're talking about, I could keep, when I was in top form, I could keep all my arrows in a spot about that big at 20 yards. I mean, I could, every time you shoot, you hit your other arrows. Every single time you'd hear them go wham, and just smack your other arrows. You'd break your nocks off the end. Sometimes you'd split your arrow halfway down. Of course, we were using aluminum arrows, but you'd still tear out the end of your aluminum arrow, things like that. So, but back when I was really in top form, I would say my group at 20 yards was about the size of a quarter, and pretty much consistently. And anyway, out of 300 points, I would say at one time I was averaging about a 295, something like that, and occasionally shoot a little better. I never did, I don't think, ever shoot a 300, and that was mostly nerves. I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't capable, it was just very difficult to do. It's mostly your nerves when you get that close. Moving down here. Blackjack says, nice shooting, Jerry. You're a man of many talents. Thank you. Karma says, wood and string. Obviously, guitar was a natural evolution. Yeah. Yeah, it's all, there's a lot of similarities, believe it or not. David says, beautiful work on that bow. I'll tell you another thing on that bow. I had to think of a way. How do you get those laminations? See, you've heard me like on the video I just released on that mandolin, where I was trying to glue that fretboard out. Well, that's a big flat area, and it wants to move on you. It slides. Well, how do you do that with that kind of stuff? So, again, and, somebody made the comment that you wrap them with, surgical stuff, and you can do that. Yeah, I just never did. I just used the old school method with pins. But on this, I did use the wrapping method. And what I did was I applied all the fiberglass resins and all that stuff, and then I wrapped it with saran wrap, really tightly all the way, the full length of it, as tight as I could get it. And then that's still not good enough. That's not going to get all the air out. There's still going to be tons of air in there. So I had to think of a way to get all that air out. Now that's the tricky part, because, if you got air pockets in there, and there's going to be air pockets in there on something that long and that flat, I guarantee you 100% every single time you do it, there's going to be air pockets in there. It'll never match up perfectly without air pockets. So I knew you had to get rid of those air pockets. So I was trying to think of a way to do that. So how I did that was, and I've got the form somewhere. It's probably up in the attic of this place for all I know. But I made a 2x6 form that was at least the width of the bow, maybe a little wider. But I shaped it exactly like the bow on the one side, and another form for the other side. So in other words, this bow was sandwiched with a 2x6 down here, and it was sandwiched with a 2x6 up here. Now this part here didn't match perfectly, but it matched from here down and from here down. And so then even that still won't get rid of, even if you clamp all that together, that still won't get rid of the air. So I'm still thinking, how will I get rid of that air? Because even that won't do it. So I took I just came up with this on my own. I took a bicycle inner tube, put it inside of a, I don't even know what this was. It was some kind of a thing I found at a fabric store. It was like a tube that I think they sew. It's like a really strong, almost like fiberglass mesh that I think they sew it on the bottoms of curtains or tops of curtains or something. I don't really know. But anyway, it's a really strong tube. And I stuffed a bicycle inner tube in that, and had I guess 4 of those, one on each side of each limb, and put that in between the press. So in other words, I had the 2x6, the inner tube, the bow, the inner tube, and then the 2x6, and then put that in a clamp, and then once I got the clamp tightened down, then I aired up the inner tubes, and that's what pressed the air out, pressed the air out of the joints. By airing up the inner tube, that squeezed all the air out of the joints, made it perfect. I mean, like, there's no air in this at all. It's absolutely perfect. And if there's air in there, you'll see it. I mean, you'll actually see little like round bubbles and things. And the same way on this side, you'll see them. And the reason I know you'll see them, because that first one I made turned out that way. And this one has no air pockets at all. So you had to come up with creative ways. Again, that's that creative clamping thing that I always talk about. Okay, moving on. Trying to find where I was now. Carmen says it's a graceful art. And Caroline Fike says, I love the leather work. I used to do some. I even did an embossed leather portrait of Roy Rogers. Oh, cool. And gave it to him at a rodeo. Hey, that's really cool. Moving down, Caroline says, by the way, I got my first deer with a bow, but of course it was a compound one. I could never draw and hold recurve. Yeah. Well, there's a lot to all of it. There's just a gazillion different things. Like the reason compounds are so popular is because, for those of you who don't shoot, when you start pulling and it's really hard for a second, and then it breaks over. The pulleys break, what they call break over, and then it just comes back real easy. So now, like, you might have pulled through 50 pounds, or like in my compound bow, I pull through 70 pounds, and then it breaks over, and I'm only holding 30 back here. So when it breaks over, I'm only having to hold on to 30 pounds, but it had the energy of 70 pounds to break it over. And anyway, that's what a compound does, and that's why most people have gone to compounds. Howard Hill, who was one of the most famous archers, at least in the early 1900s, the early 20th century. In fact, he was the guy that did the trick shooting for the Robin Hood movies, Howard Hill. His bow, it wasn't a recurve. It was what they call a split bamboo bow, and it was a long bow that he built himself. He built his own bows, and it was 110 pounds. I can't even imagine. It takes a man to pull back a 110-pound bow, and that's what he shot for. That was his average bow. That was like what he shot normally. He shot 80, 90, 100-pound bows just normally. Whew, he must have been one strong dude. And he was the guy that did the trick shooting in that first Robin Hood movie. Yeah, he must have been something. He really was a good archer. He really was. But again, he was all instinct shooting. And fingers, shooting a bow like that too. Boy, you're doing something. Let's see. Moving down, the freeze, bow hunting ruined my rifle hunting. It was so boring. Yeah, bow hunting is much more challenging. Rifle hunting is so much easier. I do the rifle hunting these days mostly because of the wild boar and the coyotes here. Incidentally, I didn't tell you the sad news. I told you Sue had 2 new ducks to replace the first 2 that had passed on. We had the one original duck from the first 3 that she had. 2 of the other ones died. One of them under her watch, one of them under my watch. Well, then she got 2 more replacement ducks. Well, guess what? One of them died under my watch this time, except that it wasn't just dead in the pen. This one got snatched up out in the yard somewhere. All we found was a few feathers, and the other 2 ducks were fine, but there was a few feathers in this one spot out there in the field, and no trace of that duck anywhere. So I think either a coyote snatched it, came in and snatched it. I mean, it's possible it was a dog. It's very possible. One of JR's dogs or something, but we just haven't seen any trace of it around here. So I kind of think it was a wild animal that took it because it took it away. So I think either a coyote got it or an eagle flew down and took it off. And eagles love ducks, so it could have been an eagle. I really don't know. But there ain't no trace of it out there except just a few feathers. Let's see. Moving on here. Bill Carter, good morning. Jerry from Hot Springs. You inspired me to dig out my old bow and see how weak I really am. Yeah, it'll show you in a hurry. Smoke on the Water is a song by Deep Purple. Oh, there you go, rock band. Well, there you go. See, that's something else I didn't know. There's a lot I don't know. Karma says, oh, okay. That was the first guitar, Karma says that was the first guitar riff we learned on the E string. Well, see, I didn't know anything about that at all. Didn't know that much about it. So that's why I didn't catch that thing about Smoke on the Water. Tom Armstrong, wondering if you could spell your last name Toza instead of Rosa. Some reason my finger insists on hitting the T instead of the R. Ain't that funny? Larry Fisher, Jerry, have you ever shot clay targets with a shotgun? Yeah, I can hit the clay birds with a shotgun. You know, I'm not saying 100%, but you know, pretty close. I can hit most every. Now, I'll be honest, that's going away from you. I don't know which one that's called, trap or is that skeet? I don't know. I think skeet's cross, I think. But anyway, I don't know that either. I'm probably wrong on that. But the point is, I can hit the one going away from you just about every single shot. Almost never miss those. But the ones going sideways, I really never have had much of opportunity to shoot those. So I never have shot the sideways one. But I think I could get a hold of it after a little practice. I have shot clay birds with a bow and been successful. Not hitting very many not a high percentage or anything, but I've hit them. I've seen that the guy I was telling you about a minute ago. Now I can't think of his name again. Boy, it's terrible to be able to be like that with names. It's just terrible. I'll get them one minute, the next minute I cannot get a name for nothing. But anyway, I've seen that fella shoot clay birds in the air with a bow. In fact, I saw him one time in a movie or a film. The idea was the clay bird took off. You know, you had to run over to the table, load your weapon, and then shoot the clay bird. I mean, the clay bird was already in flight. And the shotgun guy had to load his shotgun and go up. And Howard Hill, it was the guy I was trying to say, Howard Hill beat the shotgun guy every time with the bow. I mean, that guy, Howard Hill was something else. He was a phenomenon. You can look up old videos on Howard Hill. Most of them are pretty hokey videos because they were done by Hollywood and they were, you know how Hollywood was back in the golden years. You know, they did all these crazy things, but you can still find Howard Hill videos out there on YouTube. You might want to check them out if you're interested in archery. But they are pretty hokey by today's standards. Let's see. Allen Aviation. What's your birth date, Jerry? I'll be 69 November 8th, and I was born in St. Louis, the crummy old fairgrounds The crummy old fairgrounds hood. Well, I was born on November 28th, and 1954, and I was in St. Louis, and I think I was born at what they called the St. Louis Hospital at the time. I don't know exactly where that is, but I think it's not far off of Highway 44 there when you get into the downtown St. Louis area. Blackjack guitar. Must be a hawk or owl, Jerry. Yeah, probably, maybe. I kind of think it was kind of done during the daytime, so I kind of think it was an eagle. We do have eagles flying around here quite a bit. But more than likely, it was probably either a bobcat or a coyote. And more than likely, it was a coyote because we got a lot of coyotes. But it could easily be one of the dogs around here, too. It's very, very possible. Matt Tom Armstrong, I have the same problem with Mr. Toza's name. Karma says, Jerry, will leather craft duck armor for Sue's ducks? Yeah, I should make some leather armor for her ducks. But I don't know. I think a coyote wouldn't care. he'd eat through the leather too. Yeah, the coyotes, if you don't know, I mean, people look at them and they see a dog. They're anything but a dog. Trust me. Coyote is a killing machine. They really are. They're efficient. They know what they're doing. I'm not picking on coyotes, you understand. I like coyotes just like I like deer. I mean, I really do. But they can be overpopulated. And in our area for a while there, they were overpopulated. Then they got bad disease of mange. I really, truly, because people, you get all the smart aleck comments, You're just saying that because you like to shoot animals and kill animals. No, I wish I would have come out here. I would have rubbed your nose right in that mangy coyote so you could see. The last coyote I killed, and I kid you not, I got no reason to lie about it because I don't care whether you believe me or not. That's the bottom line. The last coyote I killed, the only hair it had on its entire body, and I mean the entire body, was a little tip. Right on the tip of its tail, it had a little hair. And on the tips, just right on the points of its ears, it had a little hair on both ears. The rest of the body was completely naked of hair. I mean, you might see one little single hair in a place or two, but no fur. You know what I mean? Like a single hair. It had that kind of hair. That was it. There was no hair on that thing. And I killed it at the first part of... It was probably more than a year ago now. It's probably 2 years ago. Probably 2 years ago this November that I killed that coyote. And I really feel truly like I did him a favor. I really did. Because can you imagine having to go through the winter like that? Oh my gosh. Golly, it's cold enough when you're bundled up. But can you imagine the death that poor animal would have had? And there's been a lot of coyotes like that. Now, I've killed coyotes here too that were perfectly fine, perfectly healthy looking. But you can't always judge what they look like until you get up close to them, So, anyway. Moving on. Blackjack guitar. Yeah, Karma says that coyotes are really smart too. Boy, that's a fact. And they get smarter the longer they are around in a particular area. They really know their environment. They're no dummies at all. Blackjack says, we have hybrid coyotes and wolf mix in Ontario, Canada. I wouldn't doubt it. I've heard about that. I've heard about the mix like that. I don't know much about it. I probably shouldn't even talk about it, but I've seen documentaries on things like that. And but we at one time here, I mean, and I'm talking maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little more than that, there were so many coyotes here, it was unbelievable. And then they get diseased like that, and they die out on their own. I mean, nature will take care of it eventually. They'll die out. another way they die out is starvation. They'll kill out everything in the area, and then they die out, and then the area repopulates itself with rabbits and squirrels and whatever. And it's another funny thing that you may not realize is that when you're sitting out in the woods deer hunting, and some of you deer hunters may have noticed this, but you might not have put it all together, because again, I've spent a lot of time in the woods. But if you really get to studying the squirrels and listening to their sounds and their chatter, you can pretty much tell when a coyote came by, when a deer came by, or when a bobcat came by. Now, those are the three sounds that and a hawk, the four sounds. The squirrels will chatter a little bit different depending on what the animal is. In fact, there was one time I heard them chatter, and I go, oh, there's a bobcat. It's got to be a bobcat coming, man. And I started watching. Sure enough, here comes the bobcat. He cut across the trail, man. And it was too far away to shoot. But anyway, I have definitely... at one time, I don't know that I could tell it right now, because you have to be in tune with that to tell it. But you can tell by their chatter. When a hawk flies over, it's pretty obvious. They'll go. It's a real fast, like I don't know if I can imitate it, but it's like a just like that, and they just scream that, and it'll just go throughout all the squirrels in the area will start doing that really fast, and that's a hawk or an owl flying over. When it comes from the air, it sounds like that. When it comes from like a deer, they'll do the same kind of sound, but it's a slower, like a like that. They just keep it up, and you can tell it's a deer, and so a deer's coming. So if you really pay attention, the squirrels will tell you what's happening. It's amazing. It really is. But you have to spend a lot of time in the woods to notice the difference, and it's a subtle difference, especially between, like, say, a coyote and a coyote and a bobcat. But there's a difference. They make a different sound. It's crazy. Let's see. Last thing here, we're already over time. C90, my guitar is C90 guy says, in Scotland, the mist on the water is called the har. Never heard that. Blackjack Guitar says, we have red squirrels that will pack your exhaust manifold with pine cones so it opens for them to release the nuts. Yeah, I tell you, around here, you got to be careful. Around here, we've got rats and mice and field rats and things. Oh, my gosh, they'll chew up your wires on your cars and stuff. Oh, it drives you nuts. We keep bait out a lot. In case anybody has a problem with rats and mice, and yet you don't want to poison other animals, the way you can control that with poison and still control it is... I take a piece of PVC pipe, a 4-inch PVC pipe that's about 16 inches long, roughly, and I drill 2 holes right in the dead center of it, right next to each other, and then I run a U-shaped wire up through that, and I can twist it off. Well, on that U-shaped wire, I put a piece of that rat bait, which has a hole through it, and you can run that wire through that hole on that rat bait, tie it up in there. And the reason you do that, if you just leave the rat bait lay out, the pack rats will pick it up and take it back to their den or their mitten, whatever you want to call it, and they'll just leave it in their den. And you'll find a rat den sometime, and it'll have 20 of those pieces in there, and they're not even eaten. But if you tie them up inside this the plastic tube and tie it up in there, then the rat they'll try to do that. They'll try to grab it and take it away, but they'll eat it in the process, and it'll kill them that way. That's how we control the rats here on the farm. Because, man, I mean, they will overrun you in no time here. It's amazing how fast they will overrun you. And they will chew up your wires, and ask me how I know. Trust me, it's happened a lot. Well, I think that's going to be it. I couldn't believe it when I first saw it. Talk about smart. Yeah. Coyotes are very, very, very smart. They really are. And like if you take a call out there in the woods, like I'll have calls that sound like a dying rabbit. Well, day one, you'll probably be lucky calling them right in. It probably won't be a problem. But day 2, not so much. They won't come the next day. You know, if they got wise to it on day 1, they'll not come back. That's a for sure. Well, I'm going to let that be the last word. Hope you enjoyed the archery thing there. I thoroughly enjoyed getting it back out and trying it. I may try that again and maybe set it up for trying to shoot clay birds or something like that and just, you know, show you what that's like. It's not easy. It's not something you can just do easy, but there's a chance I could still do that. I don't know. I haven't tried it in so long, it's hard to even say. Thanks for being so nice to me. We will see you tomorrow.